My name is Aleksander Wierzejski and welcome to Poland Daily. The funeral of the first Polish anti-communist Prime Minister Jan Olszewski will take place on Saturday, February 16. The president will announce a 3-day-long period of national mourning with the start on Thursday.
Today, President Andrzej Duda participated in a commemoration ceremony during which he signed a condolence book dedicated to the memory of the late former Polish Prime Minister Jan Olszewski. The president wrote, "A free, sovereign and independent Poland was his greatest love. He fought for her, struggled for her and served her throughout all of his beautiful life. We thank you dearly, Prime Minister." The condolence book was placed in the building of the Chancellery of the Prime Minister of Poland. Jan Olszewski died on February 7th, aged 88.
An international conference dedicated to peace in the Middle East is about to begin in Warsaw. It is jointly organized by Poland and the United States. The high-level event will be attended by the U.S. Vice President Mike Pence and U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. On Wednesday and Thursday, Warsaw will be the center of attention in world politics.
According to political commentators, during the conference in Warsaw, the US intends to consult with its allies a new strategy towards Iran. The Americans want to gather all their allies and talk to them about the issue of Iran. As you know, the Trump administration decided to walk away from Obama's Iran deal. During the conference, a new solution will be sought. The conference taking place in Warsaw will surely go down in the history of international relations, both in regards to Polish-American relations as well as the US involvement in Middle East conflicts. The fact that Warsaw was picked to host the conference is considered as a success of Polish diplomacy. As hosts, we will have a more important voice than if we were just plain participants. This is a good opportunity for the Polish voice to be heard on the subject of stability and security in the Middle East. Warsaw will host, among others, the US Vice President Mike Pence, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The level of importance Israel is attaching to the conference in Warsaw may be proved by the fact that Netanyahu had to cancel his participation in the annual prestigious conference on global security in Munich, which will take place between February 15th and 17th. The conference in Warsaw is, however, very strongly criticized by Iran. The conference is not against Iran, rather the Iranians themselves have a problem with their policy and are adjusting their expectations regarding peace in the Middle East. Representatives of over 40 governments from around the world have announced their participation in the Warsaw Conference. The deliberations that will take place at the Royal Castle and the National Stadium will be accompanied by extraordinary security measures.
The Polish consul to Norway, Sławomir Kowalski, was declared persona non grata in the Scandinavian country after trying to help a Polish family in dealing with Barneverne, the Norwegian child welfare service infamous abroad for giving up children of migrants for adoption in the most dubious of charges. Following diplomatic standard procedures, Poland declared that it will expel a Norwegian consul from Poland in return.
No one has so far been able to confirm the alleged inappropriate behavior by the Polish diplomat. However, a video clip recorded by Consul Kowalski during his intervention in the city of Hamar is available online. A Polish family whose children had been taken away by Barneverne asked the consul to assist them during their visit and conversation with the authorities at the Norwegian Children's Welfare Service Center. The officials did not accept that and called the police. In the video, the Norwegian officers can be seen acting in an arrogant manner against the consul, completely disregarding his diplomatic immunity. Meanwhile, consul's behavior did not raise any objection.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has delivered his annual speech to the nation. In it, he presented a 7-point family protection plan, which includes a promise for mothers of 4 children or more to be exempt from paying income taxes for the rest of their lives.
The Hungarian Prime Minister stated in his speech that while Western Europe is trying to solve its demographic crisis by immigration from the Third World, Hungary will tackle the issue by strengthening the position of married couples and families. We are living in such times when there are fewer and fewer children born in Europe. For the West, the answer to that challenge is immigration. For every missing child, there should be one coming in, and then the numbers will be fine. But we do not need numbers. We need Hungarian children. Apart from the promise of tax exemption for mothers of 4 and more children, Orbán also introduced new tax and loan benefits from families. We are introducing child support benefit to the young couples. Every woman below 40 who marry for the first time can receive a 10 million forint or $36,000 subsidized loan. Orbán is planning to finance the new program by maintaining a level of GDP growth 2% higher than the EU average. All this means that in Hungary, a married couple with 2 children can receive 22 million forints or $78,000 to start their home in life, and those with 3 children can receive 35 million forints or $124,000. Orbán's speech drew a couple of hundred protesters, including a number of German citizens. They argued that the Hungarian people have elected the wrong person to lead them.
The biggest problem, I think, is that the Hungarian people don't see what Viktor Orban is doing with them. He's doing wrong and they don't see it, and that's what I don't understand.
Another German protester claimed that Orban is harmful to Europe and Hungary.
From outside it looks that the liberal democracy that Viktor Orban is proposing is not a good thing. It's not good for Europe, it is not good for Hungary, and it's not good for everyday Hungarians.
Orban can feel confident ahead of the European elections in May. The latest opinion polls have his party at 54% of the votes, while Jobbik, the party in second place, can count on only 12% of the voters.
And that was it for Poland Daily. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather and following Poland Daily Business.
Welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Overnight lows will be from -2 degrees in the area of Zielona Góra, 1 degree minus in many parts of the country, and the warmest will be around Białystok with 1 degree. Some snow will appear over there, also in Olsztyn, Lublin and Katowice. If we look at the forecast for tomorrow, we will see quite a bit of snow in the southern parts of the country, also in the east, in the northeast, as well as in Olsztyn. The maximum temperature tomorrow will be 3 degrees Celsius in the southwest, also in the west and the northwest parts of the country. Warsaw will see 1 degree Celsius with snow and clouds. The next 3 days, on Wednesday, 5 degrees will be the maximum in the northwest with some snow, 3 degrees in central Poland. On Thursday, a bit warmer, 6 degrees will be the maximum in the northwest part of the country, and 1 degree will be the minimum in the northeast. Friday, 7 degrees, the maximum in the northwest, 3 degrees in central Poland, also in the northeast and in the south. This is all for tonight. Thank you and goodbye.
Poland Daily Business Edition. Our guest tonight is Professor Grzegorz of Nicolaus Copernicus University and an expert of International Atomic Energy Agency. Sir, welcome to the show, and we are talking about the energy options that we face as a Western civilization, as a Poland, and we are being told that one of these options is hydrogen.
Yes, hydrogen is an option that we must study. There is ongoing research in Europe, particularly on hydrogen cells, hydrogen fuel cells, hydrogen production, and so-called hydrogen civilization, using Jeremy Rifkin, name of his book. So hydrogen from one side, one should not mix two meanings of hydrogen. Hydrogen will be used in thermonuclear energy in Cadarache in France to produce electric energy, but this is a huge plant, which the cost is 13 billion euros, just to say. But then hydrogen can be used also in our houses and coming from water, from electrolysis of water. What is the point? The point is that even if we use alternative energies like wind energy or photovoltaic energy, we usually have this energy when it is not needed. So we have a lot of sun just at midday, but we need it in the evening. We have wind in windy days, but we don't have them in summer. So we need to make storage of energy. And how to make the storage of energy? Well, with lead batteries. No, this is not a solution. Lead is poisonous. Lead is heavy. Lead is not working.
Lithium-ion batteries?
Sorry?
Lithium-ion batteries?
No, lithium is rare. Lithium is needed for other things. Is for our phone cells. It's needed. We need to store the energy at our houses, at home. The solution is hydrogen, because we can produce hydrogen using electric power, electric current, when it is cheap, and then we have this hydrogen to fuel our cars. This is, I joke, this is water-fueled cars, because we simply put water on this side, this makes electrolysis, and then the engines makes the car going not with the electricity, but with the electricity produced by hydrogen back in the so-called fuel cell. So the technology is quite complicated, because first we need photovoltaic power to produce hydrogen. Then we store this hydrogen in these containers. Then again we have fuel cell which produces current, which makes this fan moving. So technology is pretty complicated.
The fuel cell is a device that gets the oxygen from the atmosphere, hydrogen from the storage, and then by connecting those two things, we have an electric current flowing.
Yes, we will have electric current that then which can be used to supply our houses or to supply cars, electric engines in cars. The only byproduct of this reaction is water, and water is not poisonous in any case. The point is that technology is still to be developed. And another point is that social understanding of this problem should be quite high, because people will say, well, hydrogen is explosive. Anything, also petrol is explosive. We are currently in a European educational project, fuel cells educational model, which is funded by the European Union, which is aimed to bring up the knowledge about the technologies and social awareness.
Social awareness that such a technology exists and is not dangerous. There are several crucial points on this. First of all is the production of hydrogen. You mentioned that you can have it from the electricity made by windmills or solar panels, and also or photovoltaics. And also the problem is with the
storage,
with the fuel cell that
yes.
Needs to be on high temperature, that needs to work long. So
yes,
what are the options here?
Well, we have several options. The current cost for an engine, fuel cell engine for cars is some $5,000, which is rather high cost, because a ready car is about $10,000. So this is a very delicate element. But if you look to the technology about the electricity, this is the example I always give. In 1797, when Volta put some coins one on another, making a pile, it was completely useless. It was just for a joke. The best way would be to develop new candles. Now, without electricity, we cannot live. So this can be a solution, not now, but we must be ready and we must start studying this subject.
Right. There are programs in Poland that are aimed to develop the storage, the electrosynthesis, and the fuel cells. Yeah,
there's also quite high capacity of Polish scientists to work on these subjects, because this is polymer science to make the film between two pieces of the fuel cell. This is the storage, which is we can make high pressure, or we can make some hydrides with metals. And there is also production of energy. There is a lot of issues, and there is also a place for Polish scientists to be involved in.
There are we have lots of research projects that were quite advanced in the beginning, and then it ended up with nothing. This case may be different because the Orlen is very much interested in using the hydrogen because they produce a lot of hydrogen.
Yes, obviously, this is always a question about the critical mass, because research is one point. We are not politicians, we are not economists. We do our research. Then the research has to be undertaken by the industry. And Polish industry has quite high capacity. And there is another point that in Poland we must switch from coal to new technologies. So this is a just good moment to change, to make this choice.
So this may be the solution for the problem because, as you said, the so-called renewable sources of energy are producing energy like crazy when it is not needed.
Yes, yes. But I must stress that this solution is not only for Poland. This is the solution for whole Europe. There is not the case that European Union, the research directorate pays for this kind of education and this kind of research. This is not by the case. We will need specialists in few years. So we start a lot of activities in schools because we will need engineers in this subject.
Yes. So finally, the fuel cell cars are already available on the market, yet you cannot buy them just like that. There's a special contract and so on. So when do you expect such a cars will be available for larger public?
When petrol becomes really expensive. At this moment, we will have no choice. Petrol is still cheap because United States got new resources of petrol from shale rocks, but this is not a solution for next 50 years. So as soon as there is a political decision, we must be ready for hydrogen technology.
But we are not happy with expensive petrol too, normally. But that's a different issue.
Well, we could come back to bringing wood from the forest.
The basic question: this could be a distributed solution for in-house generating of the power.
Jeremy Rifkin wrote a book saying hydrogen economy. This will be could be completely distributed, photovoltaic on the roof and the tank in the cellar.
Sir, thank you very much. That's an exciting perspective. Grzegorz Karwasz of Nicolae Copernicus University and expert of International Atomic Energy Agency was our guest, and that was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.
Welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Tomorrow, a nice and sunny day in many parts of the country. 3 degrees will be the maximum around Wrocław, Zielona Góra, also in Poznań and Szczecin. 1 degree will be the minimum around Katowice, Rzeszów, also in central Poland and around Białystok. Some snow will appear, but mainly it will be nice and sunny. If we look at the forecast for tomorrow in Europe, we will see that 18 degrees will be the maximum in Lisbon, Portugal, with a lot of sun over there. 13 degrees in Rome, 15 in the Athens, and 14 in Madrid. 13 degrees in Dublin and 12 in London, which is quite warm as well. 9 degrees in Paris, Warsaw, Prague, as well as Zagreb, Vienna and Bratislava will all see 5 degrees. The minimum temperature tomorrow will be -1 degree in Helsinki. This is all for tonight. Thank you. Goodbye.
Grzegorz Nowak is the permanent associate conductor of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra in London. His position was made permanent in January 2015, having already served for 7 years. He has led the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra on tours to Switzerland, Turkey, and Armenia, as well as giving numerous concerts throughout the UK. His Royal Philharmonic Orchestra recordings include Mendelssohn's Scottish and Italian symphonies, Shostakovich's Symphony No. 5, all of the symphonies of Schumann, and the complete symphonies and major orchestral works of Brahms and Tchaikovsky. Grzegorz Nowak's career was propelled to international status after he won the prestigious Ernest Ansermet conducting competition in Geneva, winning the first prize and all special prizes, as well as the Grand Prix, Patek Philippe, Rolex Prize, Swiss Prize, and American Patronage Prizes. He currently holds the position of music director of the Spanish Symphony Orchestra in Madrid and of the Polish National Opera in Warsaw. His production of Goplana by Zelinsky won the 2017 Operatic Oscar from the International Opera Awards in the category of Rediscovered Work, competing with such opera theaters as La Scala in Milan, Teatro Regio di Torino, or Komische Oper Berlin.
You mentioned a few names there, but with regards, sort of coming back to the musicians themselves, you've worked with many sort of highly acclaimed soloists. Are there any in particular which kind of spring to mind, which were particularly special experience to work with?
Oh yes, quite a few actually. Okay, my first experience with Chopin piano concerto was actually with Marta Argerich, one of the most fantastic pianists in the world, and that happened here in Warsaw. I was invited to conduct at the radio, and that was actually a special time in Poland because 10 years earlier, Marta quit the Chopin competition as a juror because Ivo Pogorevich was not allowed into the final round of the competition. And that actually helped Ivo to make a fantastic career because everybody also wanted to hear who is this pianist because of whom Marta quit the jury. That was a famous scandal, and Ivo was certainly one of the best candidates during this competition, and in a number of finalists, I think maybe 12 or so, there was no place for him. And Marta told me those 10 years later that, well, she quit because he was one of the three best. And she said, well, if the points which the jury was giving placed him just as a one outside of this, she suggested that, well, let's have one more in the finals so we could hear him again. And when the jury didn't agree, well, she just quit. Therefore, situation was very special in this concert because a day earlier she played a recital with her husband at the time, a very good pianist named Rabinovich. They started quarreling about the silly thing. He wanted to repeat one of the pieces as encore, and she did not. She wanted to play different works. The result was that they fought all night at the hotel. She did not get any sleep, and in the morning she decided that, well, she's not going to play the concert, and she's quitting and she's leaving. And they kept fighting at the room. So the director of the radio sent the assistant who would sit outside the room and intervene when the furniture was flying. And at some point they called me, well, she's not coming to the rehearsal and there will be no concert. What can we do? I suggested, well, try to get the Rabinovich out of the room and so that she could get at least some sleep. Well, then she wouldn't have a rehearsal, so let's play without the rehearsal. And that's what happened. She arrived at the concert hall after I already finished the overture. And she was saying, oh no, I cannot play, my hands are shaking, just give me some coffee. She drank the entire thermos of coffee. And she said she cannot play. I convinced her, well, look, the audience here loves you, and they came to see you, so at least allow them to see you. Let's go out, and it's a long introduction in this first piano concerto, in E minor piano concerto. Let me play it, and if you don't feel like playing after, I'll explain to the audience. Or if you play a few notes and then you quit, I'll explain everything. Or if you quit after the first movement or so, I'll explain all of it. But let's just go out. And on the way to the stage, she 3 times, on the stage, from the entrance to the piano, 3 times she asked, but I can stop anytime, right? I can stop anytime. Well, we played the introduction, and she came in and played like a goddess. So the clever director of the radio asked her afterwards, look, Marta, we had the television and radio here, so it's recorded. Why don't you agree that we have it on a CD, just a memory of this concert? She said, okay, fine, do it. And the CD actually received a review from Diapason in Paris as the most exhilarating recording ever.
Wow.
Grzegorz Nowak has performed alongside many of the most widely respected soloists of our time, including Martha Argerich, Yefim Bronfman, Nigel Kennedy, Anne-Sophie Mutter, Mikhail Pletnev, Mstislav Rostropovich, Gil Shaham, and Christian Zimmerman, and has worked with such singers as Janet Baker and Cheryl Milnes.
I guess that kind of says something about the way in which somebody who's very sort of an expert in their field maybe can be kind of galvanized by rather extreme situations to reach kind of higher levels in a sense.
Yes, absolutely. And even so, we played without the rehearsal. It was a fantastic performance. And obviously, she was also impressed with the introduction, and it motivated her to at least start playing. And once she started, it was heaven. I tell you another story. There was a fantastic violinist, world-famous violinist, Henrik Schering. When I was music director in Switzerland, I organized a concert of two combined orchestras, orchestra from Grenoble and orchestra from Biel, where I was music director after this competition. And Schering was to play with us Brahms' concerto, both in Biel and in Grenoble. After the concert in Biel, we were supposed to travel in my car, but at night came the heavy snow, so we decided to go by train. At that time, there were borders all around Europe, so at the border between Switzerland and France, we had to get out of the train, pass through the passport control, and then board the train again. Schering and his wife were first. They gave the passports, and the officers stood up and saluted and gave the passports back. Then I gave my Polish passport, and they kept looking at this, making the phone. It lasted several minutes, and Schering was still waiting. So he came back after a few minutes and says, "Gentlemen, I'm waiting for Maestro. What's taking you so long?" "Oh, excuse me. Well, we didn't know." Gave the passport back and so on. I asked him at the train back then, how was it that they saluted you and just passed you like this? He showed me the passport. It was a diplomatic passport, Mexican diplomatic passport to the United Nations. I said, how did it happen? Oh, he says, that was a story. I went once for a concert in South America to another country, and don't remember which one, and at the border, when I got to the passport control, the officer asked me, what's in this case? In this case, he always had two violins, one Stradivarius, one Guarneri. Excellent violinists and excellent instruments. Well, this officer says, "Oh, those are expensive instruments. You have to pay duty on this." Schering says, "What? I'm the world-famous violinist. I'm coming here for concert, and 2 days I'm leaving." Yeah, I'm the Queen of England," the officer says. And so they started arguing, and this officer was pumping the nervousness of this violinist. And at some point he says, "Okay, I will believe you if you play Bach for me." And Schering was so upset already, he grabbed the violin and played Bach. The entire airport stopped. Everybody was listening. When he finished, the officer kneeled and says, "Maestro, I recognize you at the end of the line, and I made a bet with my colleagues that you will play Bach for me." Well, Schering was not amused. When he came back to Mexico, he said, "Well, you have to arrange that I never have this problem again." They said, "Well, all we could do is to make you the cultural ambassador to United Nations, and then you could have the diplomatic passport." They did. They thought that it would be just a favor. But Schering took it very seriously and did a lot of work for culture and for culture of Mexico.
Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we are at the Warsaw Citadel, a structure built by the Russians in the 1830s and later on used as a prison for political dissidents and fighters of the January Uprising of 1863 to 1864. Some of the prisoners held here would later on become prominent figures in Polish politics, while others were executed or sent to Siberia after imprisonment. Today, we will talk to some of the experts about the specifics of the Citadel, the January Uprising, and more history about the era. Our first guest is Michał Cislak, junior custodian at the Museum of the 10th Pavilion in the Warsaw Citadel. Following the fall of the January Uprising, a lot of the Polish insurgencies find themselves abroad in other countries as immigrants, perhaps. And I was wondering if you can tell me more about it.
Takim przymusowym kierunkiem. The place Poles were usually forced to move was Siberia. The Russians sent tens of hundreds of thousands of Poles who took part in the January Uprising to Siberia. This was done first and foremost as a form of punishment, since the freedom fighters sent there were locked in shackles, tortured, beaten, humiliated and forced to work in inhumane conditions. Ze wszystkich sił, to po pierwsze miała być kara, ale po drugie Rosjanie zdawali sobie sprawę, że Polacy są osobami pracowitymi.
Apart from that, the Tsarist authorities knew that Poles were a hard-working nation, so they were perfect for colonization of that remote area. However, they weren't always assigned physical jobs. Polish engineers, teachers and even musicians were welcomed there. They were often well educated. Poles were forced to work at coal mines, to chop wood, build roads and buildings, but also to teach in schools and cultivate culture in other ways. We also can't forget about the Polish scientists there. The prime example would be Benedict Dybowski, who was sent to Siberia for being in the Polish underground government during the January Uprising.
Takich chociażby osób jak wręcz postać pomnikowa Benedykta Dybowskiego, który dzięki temu, że brał udział w pracach rządu narodowego.
In Siberia he studied local fauna and flora, for which he was admitted into the Russian Science Academy, and his sentence was shortened. He then returned to Siberia out of his own free will and continued his research until the beginning of the 20th century. He actually lived quite a long life. He died in the year 1930. Also Alexander Czekhanowski or Jan Czerski can be mentioned as examples of scientists who wouldn't have such astounding scientific careers if not for their service in the January Uprising and then their time in Siberia.
Gdyby nie byli wcześniej powstańcami styczniowymi, a później zesłańcami.
So if I understand correctly, when the Polish insurgencies are forced to immigrate, not only did they go east, but also west and even southern part of Europe are also attractive locations for them to go.
W przeciwieństwie do przymusowej emigracji, czyli w zasadzie zesłań oraz katorgi syberyjskiej, czyli tej wschodniej.
Migration to the west was a bit different than to the east. Poles were forced to move to the west not by the Russians, but due to the situation they were in. They were nothing short of refugees who fled fearing the repercussions from the Tsarist authorities for their involvement in the January Uprising. They weren't locked in shackles and they had to somehow cope with their new lives in the West. Usually they did very well, although it wasn't necessarily apparent when looking at the whole groups of Polish migrants. They were, however, extraordinary individuals. One of the most prominent Polish figures in South America, for example, was Ernest Malinowski, one of the constructors of the Andino railway line. It is to this day the highest railway line in the world, crossing through the Andes Mountains at 4,000 meters above sea level. When Ernest Malinowski was building the railway line in Chile, other insurgents were forced to construct a Trans-Siberian railway. We should also mention that Poles laid the foundations under the oil industry in Baku, today's Azerbaijan. The famous inventor of dynamite, Alfred Nobel, based a lot of his research on the work of Polish scientists who had to leave Poland after the uprising. A lot of them spread all around the world. Another famous adventurous Polish figure was Sigurd Wiśniowski, who traveled all the way to Australia to search for gold. When he didn't succeed and came back to the Polish kingdom in the beginning of the 20th century without a single dime, a certain publisher told him,
"But sir, you brought a real golden nugget with you." He meant Wiśniowski's stories from nearly 10 years of his adventures, and he was right. Stories of his travels were the best-selling novels for years to come, staying behind only the books by Karol May.
Sprzedającą się książką. Nawet był taki czas przed I wojną, że lepiej sprzedawały się tylko awanturnicze powieści Karola Maya.
Rebellion against oppressive regimes often come at the cost of repression. As an aftermath of the January Uprising, the Russians exercised an even stronger grip on the Poles. The conditions worsened and many Polish citizens had to flee the country. Joining us is Dr. Krzysztof Jabłonka, detailing the added pressure exerted by the occupying forces, the scattered population, and their whereabouts. When the January uprising was eventually put down by the Russians, there was repressions going on in Poland, and I was wondering if you know how many Poles decide to flee the country, immigrate for their own well-being.
Represje władz carskich narastały.
Repressions of the Tsarist authorities have been growing along with the uprising's duration. We experienced the biggest apogee when the Tsarist general, former Decemberist Mikhail Muravyev, who was very scared and devoted to the Tsar, took power in Lithuania. He was nicknamed Hangman because over 146 people lost their lives from his personal order. When the uprising dies down, two forms of emigration arise. The forced one, which is called exile or expulsion, in the form of convicts who had the word kat tattooed on their faces, as an abbreviation of the word convict. The second form was the so-called pasielieńcy, so the people who had to live in Siberia, but they weren't shackled or imprisoned.
Tak zwanych pasieleńców, czyli ludzi, którzy musieli mieszkać na Syberii, choć nie byli skuci kajdanami.
In addition, thousands of Poles have already crossed the beaten trail through Germany to France, where the Great Emigration, also called the Patriotic Emigration, revived. It happened 7 times in the history of Poland. And finally, there was a group of Poles that followed the Hungarian insurgents going to the south. Poles brought the culture to the Bulgarian state, which didn't have doctors, teachers, and Poles with Bulgarians communicated very easily because of the Slavic language. Some Poles came to the United States, others came to Australia and even New Zealand. They were the first Poles on these continents. It is fair to say that about 40,000 Poles were going there on their feet. It took about 6 months to get to Siberia.
6 miesięcy na Syberię, dotarli aż do najdalszych jej zakątków nad Amur.
They got to its farthest corners, so to the Amur River, to the Nertyńskie Basin, where were gold mines in terrible conditions. Besides, many of them didn't survive, didn't get out of these salt mines in Irkutsk or in Opole, where they had to extract salt in the cold, or they died from tuberculosis and different severe diseases. 20,000 of them returned. Tsar quickly realized that the Poles would simply have a great number of martyrs, and after a few years he gave an amnesty. Those who weren't directly accused of participating in the uprising, so for example the families of those who participated, could come back. There were also cases where wives left and voluntarily went with their husbands. They established family nests where they were settled.
Zakładając gniazda rodzinne tam, gdzie ich posiedlono, a główne miasta to Irkutsk, Krasnojarsk.
The main cities were Irkutsk, Krasnoyarsk, also colonies along the Lake Baikal. Poles built railway lines as both engineers and designers. A famous place near the Ob River, the town in the center of Siberia, which was used to call Novonikolayevsk, now called Novosibirsk, was the place where Poles constructed a 4-kilometer-long bridge across the river. Also the city of Tomsk was the main place where Poles were expelled, and in turn they founded the first university of Siberia.
Polacy założyli pierwszy na Syberii uniwersytet. To Polak Gajewski ufundował ze swoich pieniędzy, był bardzo bogatym kupcem.
The Pole Gajewski founded it. He was a very rich tradesman. Thousands of exiled teachers, academic professors, men of science became the first lecturers of the Siberian University.
Powstał nawet żart, że poziom tego uniwersytetu jest wyższy niż w Petersburgu.
There was even a joke that the level of this university was higher than in Petersburg, because smart people were sent to Siberia, so you could have finished your studies there, in Siberia. Also Chopin's music, as the first outside of Europe, reached Siberia, and it was performed by the Polish women, which came there for the Polish audiences on the streets of Tomsko. Russians learned this melody from Poles.
Dla miejscowej Polonii. Od Polaków tej melodii uczyli się Rosjanie.
The January Uprising was one of the most pivotal moments in the era when Poland was partitioned. The Poles would later on spend decades debating whether or not they had taken the correct path of resistance. During the interwar era, the veterans were treated as heroes, and they would later on serve as an inspiration for the soldiers fighting in the 1944 Warsaw Uprising. That's it for today. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Poland Daily Travel, where in the next series of episodes we'll be traveling along the Royal Route. That's right, the Tract Królewski in beautiful Warsaw. We'll be starting in the historic Old Town at the Cathedral of St. John. Then I'll be walking and talking with my friend Artur Górniewski as we proceed south along Krakowskie Przedmieście to the center of the city. You'll get to know the landmarks and historical places of interest that are most essential along the Royal Route. So stay with us. You won't find anything this comprehensive anywhere else. Poland Daily Travel walks and talks along the Royal Route. Hi. We're here with Poland Daily Travel in front of the cathedral in Warsaw. This is one of the most important churches in Poland, along with Częstochowa Church and the church in Krakow, St. Mary's. We're going to go inside and meet a friend of mine called Artur. And Artur is going to explain to us exactly what the history is here. So let's go in and meet him. Okay? Let's go. Okay, we're back, and right behind me is the most important religious symbol here in the cathedral, and Artur is going to tell us about it.
The history of this crucifix might be compared to the history of Poland, saved so many times in an amazing way. Mm-hmm. So to be more precise about this element, it's late Gothic style. Probably it's 14th century crucifix from Germany. Surely it's Germany, surely it's Prussia, surely it's Nuremberg. And then during Lutheran Revolution in Prussia, people were throwing out many elements just on the streets. And that was a moment when famous Polish, very important, rich person, Jerzy Baryczko, was right over there in Nuremberg at that time, and when he saw this crucifix down on the street, down on the pavement, he just took it. And he brought it to Warsaw in 1525. Then we are having a very strong hurricane in this church, and one of the towers falls down, and in 1602 we find it, and nothing happened to the crucifix, so it was saved again. And then, when it already became an amazing cathedral with many sculptures inside made of stone and with very high and steep elements, then this church was destroyed by Nazi forces during World War II, and in 1944 inhabitants of the Old Town saw Polish soldiers carrying the crucifix out from the church on their back in the moment when the church was literally collapsing. So many times saved in an amazing way, a symbol of a religion that has been very important for us.
Very interesting. And over here we have another chapel. We have this chapel, and then one right behind you right now. What's the significance of this particular place?
So we are having original crucifix in here and original elements in the same area.
Behind me is the oldest part of the cathedral, part that remained after the war. What was the story with that, Arthur?
Original elements are like pearls in this city and in this church as well. So whenever there is something original, we kept it in its original shape and adopted into reconstruction of Warsaw and Warsaw's most important cathedral. In every single family or in every single company, usually there is one person who makes things happen. And here in Warsaw, the name of the guy is Jan Zachwatowicz. He was the one who was collecting money, collecting resources and organizing people to reconstruct elements, churches, walls and buildings in the old town and Warsaw. And this church, even though first it was constructed in 1370, developed during next 6 centuries, then it was reconstructed very quickly because in 1956 we are having St. John's Archcathedral already reconstructed in the heart of the old town.
Okay, so we're inside the cathedral and we are going to walk around and we're going to look at some of the secular and religious symbols and memorials in this cathedral in the heart of Warsaw's old town. We've got to keep our voices down because it is a working cathedral and we don't want to disturb the people who are coming in to worship. We've been given permission to come in and really have a free reign, which is quite a nice thing to walk around. So we're very happy about that, and we thank the people responsible for the church, including the priest and the archdiocese, for letting us do this. Anyway, I'm here with Arthur, and Arthur, what is this that we're looking at here? What is this about, the princes of Mazowiecki?
Well, that's a very good question and very good introduction as well.
Oh, thank you.
This church helps us to understand why Warsaw and this particular place was becoming more and more important within the time. In a moment when our capital was in Krakow, and that was main Polish agglomeration, that was a very moment when settlements in this area were not absolutely on the level as it is nowadays in here. So 2 cities far away from each other, Czersk and Zakroczym, next to Vistula River, were trading with each other. On the way, in between, they decided to make a stop, comfortable, to have a rest, to relax on the way. And this stop was called Warsaw. Very good location of this place enabled further development, so that local dukes decided to stay in this place. At this very moment, at the beginning, Mazovian state, as we consider it nowadays, was an independent area. In a moment when the last duke died, 1526, Mazovian voivodeship joined the crown, joined Polish kingdom, and then later on king's elections were organized in here. So this very important moment, the moment when the last Warsawian duke died, even though it was a very sad moment, that was also a start of an amazing progress of this area.
Very interesting. So do you know why they call it Warsaw?
Yes, there is a legend. There are a few stories connected with this area, with this idea. We are having Wars and Sava. These were the names that were existing in Poland in these days. The legend connected with Sava, the mermaid, the sibling sister of the one from Copenhagen.
Right, the mermaid is a very important symbol of Warsaw,
She decided to swim into Vistula River, and this is where she met Wars. And Wars became her love, and this is how these two stayed together and established first settlement.
So it's a combination of Wars and Sava.
Correct.
Warszawa.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And to us, Warsaw.
Exactly.
Okay, great. So, and this symbolizes, is there anyone, there's no one buried in this, it's just a memorial, right?
Right, in here we are having the memorial. These 2 brothers are buried underneath our feet in catacombs of this church.
They are, okay. Stanislav and Janusz. We can see here, right?
Exactly.
It's Stanislav and Janusz.
Well, very good pronunciation, Will.
Thanks, I'm doing my best.
And this is a moment 1502 and then 1522. This is the moment of development of such graves, Renaissance graves, in Poland and in this part of the world. So we are having them not 100, we can see them in some kind of movement. They are sleeping after the medieval times when death and diseases were all around.
Right.
In Renaissance, we are having this development of the idea of life, and that's why graves of these days are representing people who are sleeping. See these two, they are hugging each other like they are not 100% dead.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? You see the detail here, too, on this.
Correct.
It's a fascinating piece. How old is this piece? Is it a replica of something old?
So we are having original elements in here from 16th century, and exactly such graves were appearing in 16th century Poland.
Right. Yeah, very interesting. Okay.
But the real graves are down underneath our feet.
In the catacombs, so there are passages below the church.
Exactly, and there are some more important people buried over there.
Let's go and see who the others are.
Let's take a look.